Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and the Manhattan skyline is gray behind me, just like my soul. And today we are talking about no poach agreements, and we should probably discuss what that even means before we get into it. So, back in the day, right? We're gonna talk about poaching first. The historical context of poaching. Lords and ladies would have lands. They would have all the animals in their lands, and they would say, "Hey, you can't hunt on my land." And then the peasant folk would say, "Sure, but we're starving." And they would sneak onto the land, and they would kill the deer or whatever, and steal it and eat it, and survive another day. But if they got caught poaching by the nobility's huntsperson, um, well, they would often be executed or punished, right? And so that phrasing comes now to modern employment, where you're going to have big companies who have to vie with each other for highly talented employees. And so sometimes they strike these deals saying, "Hey, if you don't come on to my company and poach my employees, I won't poach yours." Now this does two important things. One, it keeps employees from being able to play employers off of each other. If you're an employee for company A and you go to company B and say, "Hey, give me a better offer, I'll come work for you," and employer B says, "Sure, here's 20 grand more," you can go back to your original employer and be like, "Hey, company B's offered me 20 grand more. You better up what I earn," right? And you can go back and forth, over and over and over again until you earn what the market allows you to earn. Well, a no poach agreement puts the kibosh on that, right? Next thing that these agreements kind of do is they keep upstarts in the marketplace from being able to hire talent. And how does that work? Well, if everybody's got no poach agreements, that employees end up getting a little bit static, right? If you're working in an industry with four major players, right? Four big companies, and you learn over time that all four of those companies are probably not going to hire you once you work for one of them. The other three are not going to hire you once you work for one of them, right? Well, you stop looking for jobs. Because guess what? It hasn't worked out for you for years. You've been looking around. Never any opportunities. You stop looking. Well, a couple years from now, Company 5 enters the mix. Company 5 is an upstart. Tiny, quick, agile, clever. They need to hire talented people, and they're willing to pay like crazy to do it. But no one's looking for a job. Well, now Company 5 has to get the word out. Like, "Hey, all of you, you could actually get a better paid job. Trust us, believe us." And people are reluctant because they've grown static in their job. They've grown too comfortable. They weren't making lateral moves to get more money, better working conditions. And often they become unwilling to move. A little quirk of human psychology. So this can block upstart companies from creating a flight to quality, from challenging the established order, the companies that came before that maybe aren't even doing that great of a job, but continue to exist as institutions because they're too big to fail. And things like these no poach agreements prop them up to some extent. Okay, so that's not great. And U.S. antitrust law could look at that and say, "Yeah, seems like you're stifling competition," which neither the U.S. nor the EU really are big fans of. Because competition is important, because competition drives innovation, which makes more money, which then gets taxed. Now, I'm not a fan of no poach agreements because the first reason we talked about, right? It drives wages down. You don't get to play employers off each other when all the employers secretly know, yeah, they're not going to break their no poach agreement, so we don't care. They're not going to make you any offers. Okay, so it's important to know that in the U.S., there is now litigation tied to no poach agreements. These agreements are often not clearly spelled out. They're often not in writing. They're often on a handshake, wink, and a nod type of thing. But where you find them, the government has, as of this year, started going after some of them from an antitrust standpoint, an anti-competition standpoint. And that's really important. But there's another layer. But wait, there's more. Okay, so let's say you're a multinational corporation. And all the really big ones generally are. And you've got campuses and employees all over the world. Maybe you spent a ton of money to get a really talented professional to go work on your tech product somewhere on the Ivory Coast, right? And you really invest in that person an awful lot because they didn't just need the technical skills, but they needed the cultural and the language skills. And the depth of knowledge required was tremendous, not to mention relocating them and everything else. So this person, you are paying like crazy. Now, I don't pretend to know the laws of the Ivory Coast, and that comprises a number of different nations, and they probably all have different laws. But hypothetically, if those countries didn't take a stance on no poach agreements, you might say to your other tech-based competitors, hey, we're all spending so much money on these people, getting them here to do this really complex work in the Ivory Coast. Let's cut a deal. Let's not poach from each other, right? Okay. Well, a couple things going on there. You're now stifling competition in those countries, which is not good, although you are theoretically, for the purposes of that agreement, outside the jurisdiction of the EU and the US, right? But also, those jobs are going to have less turnover. And US-based expats or US-based employees who might want to go work in the Ivory Coast, well, those jobs aren't going to open as much because they're going to be stagnant because there's no poach agreement, and the positions are not going to open up because people are going to stay. Is that something U.S. law can necessarily address? Probably not. But here's the thing. Let's say we have that same individual. She or he is working on the Ivory Coast doing their incredible tech venture with depths of cultural and language knowledge in addition to their technical skills. And they come to a conference in New York. Well, now that no poach agreement that's going on in the Ivory Coast, I mean, it's kind of impacting how things are operating in the U.S. a little bit. Kind of changing the lives of U.S. workers. And you need to ask yourself, how does that play out? And the answer that I can provide you is, I don't know. I don't know how that plays out. But I think this is something that's happening, and I think it's something you're going to hear more and more about. And at the same time, you're going to hear more and more about these handshake agreements, these handshake no poach agreements going on in the U.S. that are artificially capping what workers can earn. And now all of this tends to deal with high skill, high net worth, high earning employees. It's unlikely that Walmart and Target are going to have like no poaching agreements. One, there's way too many people. Two, I don't know what the recruiting is like for those two big box stores, but they may not spend the same time and resources to cultivate a single employee that, you know, a super high-end creative tech company might. So this is something to watch. And it's important, while you're watching it, that you not confuse no poach agreements with non-solicitation clauses. Those are two different things. They are very distinct. They are at play in the same world, and they bear some similarities, but they are not the same. This video is primarily a very rambling video, meant to kind of engender some discussion, and that's my goal here. I don't know if I did a good job. If you feel I did or I didn't, tell me down below in the comments. I will track those, I will respond, and I will probably agree with you if you said I did a bad job today. I feel like I did a bad job today. But it doesn't mean you can't like and subscribe, because that's what helps me to help more people just like you, and to create videos like this that ramble on a topic without really providing any definitive answer.